Hey, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. What I want to talk to you guys about today is something we've been hinting at for a long time. I've been talking to you guys about swimming bigger jigs here over the last year or two. And what I wanted to do today is officially announce the California Swim Jig. We've been talking a lot about these, hinting that there was something coming, but they're finally here. They're available today at Tackle Warehouse. They've got them exclusively for the next month. You need to check these baits out. So what I wanted to do was talk to you about them. Basically what they are, what's different about them, because yes, they're a new model of swim jig. They're coming from Dirty Jigs, but they're a lot more than that. This is an entirely new genre of swim jig. You know, in the past, you hear guys talking about a swim jig, they're swimming one of two things. They're either swimming a northern swim jig or a finesse swim jig, or they're fishing a Coosa River style swim jig with a stouter hook. That's all that's out there. That's what people are swimming. But now you've got the California Swim Jig, and just to show you the difference, I mean, the hooks are way bigger. We're using heavy weights, bigger skirts. This is not a finesse thing. The California Swim Jig is a big fish bait for people that want to go out, put a better quality fish in the boat. And I mean, I'm not saying it won't catch smaller fish. I catch tons of 1 and 2 pounders on these things, but they are a big fish bait. You can catch a lot of big kicker fish on them. So what's so important about these? Why does a swim jig even matter? What sets these apart, the reason I started throwing a swim jig instead of just a traditional swim bait, is the secondary action. What I mean by that is when you're out on the water and you're throwing a swim bait, all you've got is just the swim bait tail kicking, and that's great. They work really well. They catch giant fish. But what that is, that's called primary action. A live fish has more than that. A live fish has got that tail kicking, but they've also got their gills flickering, their fins are going, their scales are flashing. That's all secondary action. That's something you can't duplicate with a swim bait. That's where the swim jig comes into play. You've got the skirt. When that skirt is moving in the water, that's that secondary action that you can't duplicate any other way. You've got the tail going. When we swim these, this isn't just a regular old swim jig. You're not going to put a curly tail grub on the back of it. You can, it'll work, but if you really want to see the potential, you need to put a small swim bait on it. I use the RoboWorm Easy Shad. I'm going to jump to a clip in the water here in just a second so that you can see why I do that. But swim bait on the back, you've got your primary action, but then that skirt is pulsating and moving, and that's duplicating all those other things that a live fish does that a traditional swim bait can't duplicate. So that's why we're using these. Now we'll jump over to the water here in a second so you can see the swim jig in the water. But what you're going to see, traditionally when you throw a swim jig, you've got to reel and shake that rod to get that skirt moving. With this bait, with that RoboWorm on the back of it, the bait moves enough on its own to keep that skirt pulsating. So all you do is just cast and retrieve, chuck and wind. That's all we're doing with these baits, and they look awesome on their own. So let's jump over the water so you can see that. So as you can see, that skirt's moving totally on its own, even though that bait's just being straight retrieved through the water. That's so key. Now what else is so neat about these baits? Let me move this rod out of the way. They're coming in some swim bait style colors. That's what I personally am so excited about. I love throwing swim baits, and when I started throwing the swim jig, there were just a couple of color options. The ones I've always talked about are Alabama Brim and Crappie are the two colors you guys, if you've been watching the website, have been seeing me talk about forever. I still love them. They're still in the lineup, but now there's a bunch of other colors. My favorites, personally, we've got Stalker Trout, which don't let the name fool you. It's not a trout color. The reason we went with that name is it perfectly matches RoboWorm Easy Shad's Stalker Trout color. So that's Tactical Trout. It's got the pink highlights, one of my personal favorites. Tactical Chartreuse Shad is another one. It's just an amazing bait. Tactical Shad. Here's one that everybody's going to love. Light Hitch. We've got gizzard, shad. We've got all sorts of different colors so that no matter where you are in the country, you can pick up these baits. You can duplicate the bait fish in your waterways and put bigger fish in the boat. Now personally, when I fish them, they shine in deep water, shallow water, but you're going to notice on Tackle Warehouse, they only come in 1/2 ounce and 3/4 ounce. And let me explain why. What we're doing with this bait is not just throwing it out there. Like I said, we're chucking and winding, but I'm not just throwing it out in open water. I like to fish these around cover. And if you fish in a highly pressured lake where a lot of people are throwing spinner baits or even a lighter swim jig over the top of the grass or shallow running crankbaits, this lets you give them a totally different approach. My favorite by far is the 3/4 ounce. Everything you're seeing me hold up is 3/4 ounce. The half works great too, but for what I like to do, the 3/4 does it. What I do is when the fish start getting around the grass in the summertime, most people will fish the lanes, the channels between the grass where they can get a crankbait or a spinnerbait through and it doesn't get hung up. Or if they're throwing a light swim jig, they swim it up over the top of the grass. What I do is I take that 3/4 ounce swim jig and I run it straight through the center of the grass. Just plow it through there. It's something the bass don't see. These are totally weedless. I throw them so far back in the tules they go out of sight, and you just start reeling nice and slow and they'll just hunt their way, come right through there. Incredibly weedless. So slam them through the tules, slam them through the grass. That's why I use those heavy weights. It's not to fish deep water. It's to fish fast, to fish aggressively in shallow water. Go ahead and give them a try. I hope you enjoy the baits, and we'll talk soon.